All right, so we saw that the session IDs of going into these two different functions, the register and the profile function, did not match, and the reason is that the browser is failing to send us the same cookie in both of these methods, and the reason is that by default, the fetches that we're using in the service, all these fetches, right? For registering, for profile, by default, these fetches do not send cookies, right? We have to configure them to actually send the cookies, right? So to do that, we need to turn on credentials, right, in each one of these fetches, right? And the way we do that is that we use the credentials option in the fetch, and we need to say that we do want to include the credentials as we go. By default, the credentials are not included, and the way that the credentials are included is just basically included in the cookies, right? So send the cookies over. So if you want any pair, any requests that you're sending from the client that together want to work together and participate in the same session, they all have to have this credentials include. So because we want the profile to participate in the same session as our register, we need to remember to send the credentials include over. Okay, let's stop the server for a second. In addition to that, because we from the client we're asking that we want to participate in these credentials, the server is actually going to be a little more stricter on what it's going to accept here for the cross origin, right? So instead, it's not going to allow just to have any domain come in here, right? If we want to log in, well, I'm only going to allow certain folks to be able to log in here. I'm not just going to allow anybody to log in. So here we need to list the URL for the domain that we are allowing the credentials. So we're going to have here the URL is coming from 3000 here. Let's paste it in here. So it's there it is. So it's HTTP localhost 3000, right? The other thing that we need to turn on is that the browser is requesting the server that they want to participate in these credential cookies sharing, whatnot, back and forth. So for this to work, the server needs to say, yes, okay, I'll play, right? I'll allow these credentials to go through. So for that, notice that there's a option here called allow credentials, and this needs to be equal to true. Equal to true, the string true, not the Boolean true. Okay, this needs to be the string true. Okay, all right. So let's try it out. Let's restart the server. All right, so let's head over to the client side. On the profile, what I like to be able to do is that as the profile comes in from the server, maybe we want to display here the username of the user who has just registered and is now the current profile. Yes. So to do that, maybe we'll store the state here of whoever's coming back. Maybe we have a profile object, and maybe we have the username in there, right? Plus everything else what we might want to display. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to this dot set state, and we're going to initialize the profile. We're going to say that the profile object is just going to be this dot is going to be the profile object that is coming from the server, and then what we're going to display here, we're going to say hi. We're going to say this dot state dot profile dot username. Okay, so let's try this out. Let's see if this blows up. It blew up. Okay, so we're in the registration screen, and let's log in as let's register as Alice. Let's register. Okay, notice that it says hi Alice. You see that? That information came from the server, right? Notice that we were able to register successfully. We got Alice in there, and it came back with Alice was registered with ID number 4, and the profile went out to fetch for the profile, and it came back right? It came back as the user that we stored in the session, right? And the reason it worked is that because the cookie that is being sent over back and forth, right, is the same session ID. Notice that we can see what the session ID is. See this? See that says session ID here? Notice that it starts with 70CF whatnot. If you look at the register, we'll see that it's the same session ID 70CF4. See that? That is the cookie that the server asked the browser to keep track of, and because we turned on that credentials include, now we are including those cookies that the server sent us. We're sending them over to the server, and that's how the server can tell which session to use, right? If we don't send the session ID, it'll assume it's a completely different user, and it'll create a brand new session ID, and it won't work. All right. So there we have it. So we have demonstrated, right, being able to register a person and then make them the currently logged in user. Notice that if I refresh the screen, notice that I still keep the fact that I know that Alice is the current profile. Notice that I'm not storing any of the state information on the client, right? Notice that it's not part of the URL. So this state information exclusively lives on the server, and that's where it should be, right? Anything that is private information, anything that might be sensitive information, right? That should live on the server. We do have a small flaw, is that when it's coming back, it's passing also the password. See that? So let's fix that. Let's go to the server, right, and make sure that every time we come back from the server, any information such as that will not be sent back. So for instance, here we're storing the server in the database, right? And before we store it in the attribute or we send it back, let's clear the password. We're going to say new username. Let's set it to something else. Maybe just clear it out. Also, when we come back in the profile and we send it back to the server, let's just make sure that never ever the password leaves the server, right, and goes back in the clear for the clients to see. So if we restart the server and we register as someone else, let's see. Right, let's go back to the register and let's register as Dan. We register. Notice that we see in the register. Notice that the password did not come back, and we went to fetch the profile. Also, the password didn't come back, right? But it is on the server. Unfortunately, it is being saved in the database in the clear. Notice that all our passwords, right, are available here in the clear, which is not ideal. Ideally, what you would do is that you would encrypt this as well, putting it on the server, because it's, if it's visible like this, it's still a vulnerability. Me as a system administrator that might have access to the database, I could go in and see everybody's password and log in as anybody I wanted. So typically we would also encrypt it here, but I'll leave that up to you.